The most interesting part about Boost is basically not the end product, is basically the journey within Boost and what made it into one of the best companies to work for in New Zealand, which is quite spectacular.
You know, the thing that's been most successful for me has been stopping doing things and creating a vacuum within the business that needs to be filled and holding that tension until the business fills it.
Welcome to another episode of Love Not Fear podcast. And this is another edition with a guest. And I am so lucky to have with me Nathan Donaldson from New Zealand. Nathan and I met each other a couple of months ago in a course to get better at public speaking. And we, by coincidence, had to spend another day because there were all kinds of problems with flights. So that was fun. We spoke about a book you wrote, and that's going to be largely the topic of today as well. But I guess
Sure.
I'm going to let you introduce. But I can tell you one thing: Nathan is looking at an evening because he's in New Zealand, and here in different weather, different temperature, complete different circumstances. Nathan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Eduard. It's great to be here, and thanks for the lovely introduction. A bit about myself. I've been running a business for 23 years, the same business. I trained as a designer originally, but I could never draw, so I never had a design career in my future. But I think what design gave me was an interest in problem solving and the tools of problem solving. And so my particular interest over the last, say, 6 to 10 years has been around organizational design, and specifically the organizational design of non-hierarchical organizations. And so that's really been my focus, is to take our organization to the next level in a way that empowers everybody in the organization.
Is this also the core business of Boost, your company? What does Boost do?
So Boost is a software company. Our customers are the New Zealand government. We produce web and mobile software for government departments. So, for instance, we look after most of the National Library of New Zealand's public-facing website, their search infrastructure, also their Digital NZ website, which takes content from around 300 different cultural institutions, aggregates it into one metadata database, and then makes it searchable by all New Zealanders and, in fact, everyone in the world, so that they can share and reuse the content that is out there amongst many different providers.
Okay. But the most interesting part about Boost is basically not the end product, is basically the journey within Boost and what made it into one of the best companies to work for in New Zealand, which is quite spectacular. So when you spoke about the title of your book, you made this very funny comment, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life. The book is called Unicorns Over Rainbows. And you mentioned, as a side note, I wonder how many 13 or 8-year-old girls would be heavily disappointed to see that they had not bought a fluffy toy, but indeed a management book, so to speak.
Yes, that's my backup plan, is if the book doesn't sell well, I'm hoping for a whole lot of accidental sales on Amazon instead.
It's very funny. So, Unicorns Over Rainbows.
Yeah. So I wrote it over the last 18 months. I really wanted to give back, I suppose, to the community that I've taken so much from. So like many of us in the entrepreneurial community, we really stand on the shoulders of giants. So reading the books of Jim Collins, Patrick Lencioni, amongst many, many others, have given me so much that I wanted to take something that I'd learned and give back to the community and try and raise everybody up. So when I sat down to look at what it was that I was doing different, there wasn't very much there, actually. I went through with my leadership team, and we jotted down every change we'd made in the last 5 years. And there was something like 50 different changes we'd made to the business. And they were largely conceptual changes. So they would be frameworks we'd be using, or they would be thinking tools. And each of those had come from a book or a talk or a conference. And so I started to think, maybe I don't have anything that's worthwhile sharing. But talking with my team, what I'd realized is that we had created quite a unique way of implementing these changes after a lot of trial and error. So I remember in the early days of trying to make change, and like so many entrepreneurs, I would have read a book, or I would have gone to a conference. I'd be so excited to come back and implement the change in the business. And I'd just rush into the room. I'd gather everyone around. I'd tell them, we're going to do this, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be awesome. And they'd just be rolling of eyes and sighing. And I think, one of the things I heard from that time was, well, we don't have to do this idea because Nathan will have forgotten about it in a week and he'll have a new idea. Yeah. And so when I sat down to write the book, it was, okay, how is it that we've been successful in bringing the business on a journey over the last, say, 8 to 10 years of implementing so many changes? And that's really what the book's about. It's a model, we call it the Good Small Change model, of how to make change in a business. And really all change in a business is cultural change. It's the, how you do things, the norms, how you respond to outside pressures, how you respond to opportunities. So the book's about making cultural change in organizations.
Okay. Well, anybody who doesn't recognize this example you gave by manager storming in full of ideas, let's implement it, and that's I think 99% of our audience recognizes this problem, and I have been guilty at doing so myself. Yeah. Just to let you know, you spoke about the shoulders of giants that you stand on writing the book, but it's very inspiring to read about somebody who has implemented. And I read your book, and to me it was very comforting to say that the incremental changes, small changes, lead up to a huge change. So that there's it doesn't matter where you start in the path. So it actually gives tools to not only look back at what happened, but also to really embrace the fact that small steps in the right direction are indeed steps. What does the model do? The small changes model. How can I apply it?
So the core of the model was 3 parts. There's curiosity, safety, and what I've called accessibility. And so curiosity is about invoking your own curiosity about what changes are needed. So working out what is that one small thing you can do that moves the business forward in a small but meaningful way. Then curiosity is also about invoking your team's curiosity, helping them to imagine a future where this change has been achieved, and then asking them, what's the business going to be like? What's it going to be like for you personally? And how can you play a part in this? Then the second part, accessibility, is really about making the change easy to understand. So one of the key things that I've seen over the years is that big complex changes, they're too hard to communicate and for people to really fully understand to be able to easily implement. I found really things that you can explain in 20 to 30 minutes, but might take a week or 2 to unpack, are really about the right size. And so those changes, making them accessible, means that the team can not only implement them, but they can also share them. So that's what helps share the changes across the business. And I know that I've been successful when not only the people I've taught the change to, but people more widely in the team are using the same vocabulary that we've created for the changes. And so when I start to hear that around the business, I get really excited because I know the change is flowing out by itself. And the last part is about safety. And safety is it's a bit misunderstood, I think. It's a lot talked about, but it's quite a subtle thing. And, you can spend weeks, months, years creating these fantastic safe spaces, and then just one bad joke or one stupid comment can just have the safety evaporate away like that. And I've been guilty so many times of just blurting out things that I thought were funny that just completely ruined the whole moment and stopped people from being able to communicate and share. So safety is about creating that space where everybody feels empowered to be themselves. And I think when we're looking for safe spaces, it's not a group of people sitting around agreeing. It's a group of people who are sitting around and they're disagreeing, not aggressively, but wholeheartedly, trying to get to the nub of what the issue is. But they also have enormous respect for each other and for the space that you've created. And so when I see that happening, then I know that there's true safety. There is a fourth element that underlies the whole framework, and that's empathy. And empathy's been quite a journey for me. So we're big fans of the Clifton's Strength Finder, what was once Gallup's Strength Finder. And so everybody in the business has their strengths, knows them, and we spend time to understand what it means for us. And when I first did my strengths in 2016, empathy was at the bottom for me. So, and my team thought it was hilarious. They would often tease me about it. But over the last 4 years, I've really put a lot of work into growing my empathy. And when I retook the Clifton's Strengths Finder, pretty much everything had stayed the same, except empathy had come into my top 10. And so the thing that had dropped out was command. So command used to be very high for me, and now that's dropped down and empathy's higher. And what having better empathy has enabled me to do is to feel what it's like for other people when change is happening in the business. Before, I couldn't really feel it. I thought that all change was good. I was always excited about making changes. I always wanted to see what the outcomes were, but I didn't really understand what it meant for the people around me. So by developing my empathy, I've been able to better feel what they're feeling. And now I've been able to, I would say, set the level of change at the right level for the team so that they don't feel overwhelmed and so that we can actually make progress rather than just hitting those brick walls. And the way I increased my empathy was by surrounding myself with very empathetic people. So making a leadership team full of people with extremely high empathy, and then listening to what they had to say about the issues that would come up, because they would have such a different perspective than I would have. And it was incredibly humbling because I realized, I was just a bit of a dick sometimes, just not really caring about how people felt. And I thought that was okay. But actually what it did was it stopped the business going forward. So on one side, I'm all about creating these humane workspaces. But at the end of the day, this isn't a hobby. I want the business to be successful, and I want it to be one of the most successful businesses in New Zealand.
Are you at a point where your team also safeguards the core values in your company? So anybody who's not a fit, it's the whole team will make that apparent. Are you there yet?
100%. And that's one of the most painful things that happen. So we hire very, very slowly. So we sort of follow the model that Richard Sheridan briefly touched on in his book, The Happiness Advantage. No, not The Happiness Advantage. He's at Menlo Systems, and the book is called... Yeah. So we follow their model for hiring, and it's very, very slow. So we get a high percentage of people who really do fit well with us. But when people's values don't fit, it just doesn't work at all. And that means we have to have some really courageous conversations. And I think it's really hard. It's really hard for everyone because you can't point to, the output of their work. So you can't say your work's not good enough, but there's just something that's not right. And for them, I can see that it feels like they're being expelled from a group of people, and it can feel very hurtful. So we try to be as sensitive as we can with it, but I think that it just feels inevitably like a bit of a breakup for people, because the people surrounding them are warm and friendly and empathetic, and it can be hard to understand why they don't quite fit in.
And this warmth and this culture, is that it might look like it's all kind of soft, and the KPIs and benchmarks are not met. Can you be tough in business while keeping a culture that is okay, I'm going to use it, fluffy, or
Yeah,
well constructed? Let's put it that way. Yeah.
I think definitely. For me, what it's been about is sort of raising my eyes to look at a longer time horizon. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to discover what works over the longer time rather than the shorter time. And what I've discovered is that improving the culture is the thing that delivers the results long term. And so it's certainly not about, or I'll take a step back actually. One of the things that we did years ago was we joined an organization called World Blue. And they're about freedom-centered workplaces. And they have 10 principles. And one of the principles is balancing the collective and the individual. So the collective being the business and the individual being the people in the business. And so every decision we make, we actively reference that. We say, is there a balance between the individual and the collective? And in fact, business success is embodied in our values as well. So we have 4 core values. We have courage, manaakitanga, which I can talk about as well, servant leadership, and responsibility. And when we unpack responsibility, it's everybody's responsible to make sure that the business is financially successful. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is, I'm not sure how you are on swearing. Do you mind? Sorry. So as the Australians say, we're not here to fuck spiders. So we're here to run a business and to be successful. And businesses are just so much more fun when you're making a decent profit. Business when you're not making a profit is no fun at all. And so in order to build the culture we want, we actually have to be really profitable. It's just a core to how we run. And so we want to be the happiest business and the most productive business in New Zealand.
Yeah, there's all kinds of studies that prove that one doesn't come at the expense of the other. I'd like to go back to one thing. I'm the Clifton Strength Finder, where your empathy was really low, and you were able to change that. I mean, this is the Love Not Fear podcast, so there's probably steps that you have taken deliberately, not deliberately, but just by gaining insight on what worked, surrounding yourself with the right people. I heard you say. And could I ask you to look at a moment where you had to overcome some of that fears you had, because the book is full of examples. So I know you have a couple.
Yeah, for sure. So I've got one from a couple of months ago, actually. So I'm sure for you guys as well as for us, the world's changed post-COVID. And one of the ways that's changed is the way we view sickness and illness in the workplace. And so it's no longer acceptable to come to work having a cold or something like that, right? And so what we had noticed is that our sick days were steadily rising over the last couple of years post-COVID. And along with that steady rise in sick days was an increase in people feeling guilty about being away sick and feeling stressed about limited sick leave. So in New Zealand, by law, we have 10 days per year sick leave. And so we got together as a leadership team and said, well, what can we do? What can we run as an experiment to see if we can alleviate these problems and bring down our sick leave? And what we decided to do was try an experiment where we would have unlimited sick leave. That's obviously quite scary from the business owner perspective. You know, that's, I think you have to be certain that your people are not going to be taking advantage of that. So having a strong culture is, I think, a baseline for running some of these experiments, because you need to have the culture in place to have the safety to do it. But it was still a leap of faith. The way we implemented this was we got the whole team together and talked them through the idea of unlimited sick leave. And then we asked for their input on it. Did they want to try it? And we were also absolutely explicit that if this didn't work for the business, then we'd try something else. We might not go back to where we were, but this was an experiment that we were going to try. And we were going to run it for a while and then measure the results and see what happened. What has happened is our sick leave has doubled. So, but it's not for everybody. So the people who were quite ill beforehand, like had less sort of physical resilience, they were taking more sick leave. The people who weren't like that were taking the same amount. There was no change for them. So sort of taking that background, we did a survey. We did 2 surveys of the team and said, hey, how do you think it's going? And what we got was an overwhelming response that they didn't really like it. They didn't like the unlimited sick leave because of the position it put the organization in. And so I suppose, to come back to your first question, overcoming the fear of what might happen and then waiting to see what the results were, the most interesting result for me was not that the sick leave increased or decreased, but it was the team's strong responsibility for the business. And so the team's come back to us with some ideas around moving to 15 to 20 days. And we've also implemented some stuff where we're providing more support to the people who are having more sick days off to help them have less sick days. So more targeted help for those people.
Did you single out this sick leave agreement apart from holidays and working from home? Because they're all intertwined.
Yeah. We did single them out. So we have, so New Zealand's probably more similar to Europe than it is to the States. We have 4 weeks of annual leave, and we have 10 days of sick leave a year, and we have various other leaves as bereavement leave and stuff like that. So we don't have unlimited, but we have what I think is a reasonable amount. We try not to intertwine them, and in fact, if you take annual leave in New Zealand, but you get sick while you're on annual leave, quite a few employers will let you take those days as sick leaves rather than annual leave days. So they are 2 distinct things. But what we wanted to do was try to alleviate people's fear and worry about being sick and running out of those sick days over the year. We wanted to kind of take that off the table so that they could live without fear, because we thought that would give us a better result overall.
Yeah. So it's too early to see where this is going, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're at the stage where we're going to stop and reset the parameters of the experiment and try something new. And so that will be, we're talking about a number of different things, but possibly bringing it down to 15 to 20 days of sick leave. But also we're looking at income protection insurance, so that if people have extended sick leave, they still get paid, but it doesn't impact the business. Yeah. So trying to balance the individual and the collective.
Okay, thanks. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs and leaders that are striving to create a culture that is dynamic, positive? I like the culture you created at Boost. What are the first steps? Is it an assessment you take, or what is it?
I think the first step's slowing down, and the second step's opening your ears. So often I've been guilty of just charging in, making changes, but it's just not been effective, even if they were good changes. The joke with my team is that they'll implement my ideas three years after I come up with them. So, it can sometimes take that long. So for me, the biggest impact has been slowing down, listening, letting other people have the ideas, letting other people, being the last person in the room to speak when we're coming to a decision, devolving responsibility, empowering other people to fill gaps.
I'm not hearing. I'm looking for the word ownership, but you haven't dropped it yet.
No, I don't think that's important. I mean, the thing that's been most successful for me has been stopping doing things and creating a vacuum within the business that needs to be filled, and holding that tension until the business fills it.
Okay.
And sometimes I've had to hold that tension for a long time. One particular part of the business, I think, took 8 years from me stopping doing that piece of work to we having someone doing it to the standard that I was happy with. And so over that 8 years, we just put up with underperformance in that area. Even in sales, I would say it took 6 years to get sales even close to on track.
Okay.
And that's not fun, but for me, I'm prepared to wait to get the results, because I know that every time I step back in and do something, it just sets us back further and further. So for the last 10 years, I've lived remotely from the business. So the business is in Wellington, which is at the bottom of the North Island of New Zealand. And I live in Dunedin, which is at the bottom of the South Island. It's an hour and a quarter flight away. I fly up to Wellington for a day and a half a week. And I end up being there about every second week on average through the year. So me moving away from the business has really created that space for other people to grow and to be empowered. I've had one of my team just left. She'd been with us for 12 years, and she'd seen me grow through that time and the business grow just tremendously. And she talks about the early days of me just having complete control over everything, just being involved in every decision. But when I left and relocated to Queenstown, another city in the bottom of the South Island, there was no way for me to do that anymore, and I had to give up that control. I would love to say that I had, designed an experiment to shift away from the company to see how it would work and to empower everyone, but that's not the truth. We were on the brink of bankruptcy, and I just wasn't coping. And so I wanted to, there was a couple of things going on. One was I was feeling quite lonely, wanted to be closer to a friend who lived in Queenstown. Queenstown's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's also just got amazing access to the outdoors. It's in the Alps and by a lake. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be bankrupt, I'd rather be bankrupt somewhere beautiful with nice outdoors I can go skiing than be bankrupt in the city. And I also wanted to free a bit of money up from the house, but I didn't really want to go to the bank and say, hey, I need money for the business. So, I think I came home and convinced my wife to shift to Queenstown before she even realized what was happening. And in about 2 months, we shifted the family down there, and all of a sudden I was working remotely from the business. And, the next couple of years were super tough.
Yeah. Now you wrote about it in the book, and I can highly recommend the book. It reads like a fireside chat. It's really well written, and it's like a friend talking to you. So compliments on the book. And yeah, I want to this backlog of ideas that resonates with me a lot. Ever since I used first Evernote and then Notion, I have a section where I have these brilliant ideas. And it alleviates me when I put these brilliant ideas into there. So it's what I used to bombard in my company. So, okay, let's do this. I heard this, and it's amazing. I first put it there and let it simmer, like you said. And it could be 3 years, 5 years. And sometimes, if you re-look at that little list, and then something pops up where the timing is right, or something has already happened, so you can just feed that what's already happening, and you see it grow, and that's kind of magical. Yeah, and it also makes me proud to see that some industry changing trends I have foreseen quite early, and then to be able to go back and say, okay, I was the first mover there, or this is where we took a huge leap of faith, like you said. Yeah, well, it's being a business owner is a big journey, and it takes guts, it takes patience, it takes blood, sweat, and tears, like we all know. The other question would be, like, how often do you move yourself away from the company for a longer, for extended time to really get a picture of what's going on?
I had a 2-month break over Christmas, this Christmas. So New Zealand, because Christmas is during summer, everyone takes their summer holidays over Christmas time, Christmas and New Year. So the country sort of it sort of closes down for a period. Not as much as it used to in the old days. Wellington, which is the capital city, would be a ghost town for a month. Like, you could walk down the middle of the main street and nothing would be happening. So it's not quite like that anymore. But so I took 2 months off over Christmas. Previous to that, I'd taken a couple of months off to travel around Southeast Asia with family. I haven't had any really long breaks. And I think it's not so much because I'm worried what will happen to the business. It's more that I want to be there to support the team. So in my role, I really am. So I mentioned one of our values earlier was servant leadership, and that's really important to me. Standing behind people, helping them succeed. And so the thing that stops me from going away for really long periods at the moment is that I don't want to leave people without that support. And so we're working to put those sort of supports in.
So it's not about the sales and the clients and the deals. It's about the people that you miss. That's actually a very good place. That comes from the heart and not from the wallet.
So I keep telling my team that I'm leaving, and I'm going to leave by design, or I'm going to leave in a box.
Okay.
And so we have to plan for that now. And so that's what we're doing at the moment. Yeah. We're planning for me to leave, and if I can do a good job of it, then I'll get to walk out, in a way that I'm happy with. If I don't do a good job of it, I'll probably have a heart attack and have to stop, or there'll be something like that going on. So it's really important to me to build that succession plan in. So I haven't been involved in sales in the business for 9 years, 10 years. I haven't done anything operational in the business for 7 years. All my job really is strategy and supporting the leadership team. So coaching the leadership team, that's all I do. But that still leaves a big gap when I go. And so at the moment, I'm working with a couple of the team to have them step into a co-CEOship. And we're also working on making the business 100% employee owned.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. So when you give a talk on this, is there anything you leave your audience with, to like a checklist to check with this, or homework?
Yeah. So, the model in the book is really, really simple. Curiosity, accessibility, safety. And at the core of that is about making small changes that are going to have large impacts. So when I'm talking about this with groups, I'll leave them with the idea of going back to their organization, to their home, to their business, and making one small change, and then seeing what happens.
And do you point out what it is that it should be? Because it's probably this nagging thing that it's off balance. Do you have any suggestions to look into what has priority? How do you prioritize all these great ideas?
Well, I don't know about you, but for the longest time, everything in my business was on fire. So it didn't really matter where I looked. There was always something that needed attention. So it was really about what was the best idea that had come up that would have the biggest impact. I think if I was going to say, where's one place to start, I'd probably start with improving hiring. And so the things that have been really successful for us there have been Patrick Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player, with his model of humble, hungry, and smart. That's a lens that we use all the time for hiring, and that's been really successful for the conversations. And so that would be a good place to start. Sometimes these changes, they're quite small, but they can take quite a long time to master. I sort of think of it like chess. You can learn to play chess, the mechanics of chess, in half an hour, but it takes a lifetime to really master it. And these things are all like that. So we set ourselves a goal 4 years ago to be the best at hiring in New Zealand. And we're pretty good now. I don't know if we're the best, but I could confidently say that that we have about a 90% hit rate with our team, 90 to 95%, and our churn's very, very low. But that took 4 years. That it improves bit by bit, and you add to it bit by bit, just small piece after small piece until you get to where you want to be, I think.
You have a website, nathandonaldson.com. Are there any goodies for entrepreneurs they can take a look at? Maybe do you have a download of the small changes model, or what is it that we can offer? I will put the link to your book. The book is available on Kindle anywhere in the world, on Amazon and eBay. So that's not a problem. But how about this model?
Yeah, so the model's not on there, but the 50 changes we made over the last 6 years is. So if you read the book and want to know what the 50 changes that we made in the business were, you can go and find that there.
Okay.
I will put the model up there at some stage, so I will let you know, and you can add a link to the show notes later. If you
Good.
like.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I thought it was, I can really recommend the book for. It's really hopeful. It has some really powerful moments. Like we didn't even mention that, but your entrepreneurial journey is far from a smooth ride. So it's really interesting to read about it. So 1, you don't feel alone. 2, you had the courage and the love for the whole process, and to have the balls to look inside to come over that. So that for me was a great book, very hopeful, and it resonated on many other levels than just the culture part. So for that reason alone, culture part is really strong in content, but the others are amazing, and it's nice and small, and has a beautiful cover. Thank you, Nathan. Hope to see you in I'll see you next month in Singapore. Cool.
Yeah, really excited.
Yeah, cool.
Join you for some chili crab.
Yeah. Thank you, and
awesome.
Tune in.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.